What's going on, guys? What is going on, YouTube? What's going on, Twitter? My name is Randy. This is the Randy Talks Mets show, where you get your latest Mets media, everything you need to know about the New York Mets. And I am joined by Will Sammon, the man, the guy that, first of all, has had an amazing offseason. My goodness. Welcome, Will Sammon from The Athletic, also a SNY contributor as well. How you doing, Will?
Good, Randy. The offseason's over for me. It's spring training now, man.
Yeah, no, it's definitely over. I wanted to, ask you first, what overall, who's your team? Like, are you a fan of a baseball team, or do you just love baseball?
Yeah, not anymore. Once you go into the reporting side of things, which I did a long time ago at this point, you sort of give up the fandom part of
Hmm.
your relationship with whatever it is that you're covering, if it's sports at least. So I gave it up long ago. I mean, I grew up a Mets fan. I grew up in Queens. So as a kid, like the late 90s, 2000s were my teams. So like that's my history, but I would
Yeah.
say like I completely missed the 2015 like World Series run, for instance. None of those seasons I was even paying all that much attention to actually because I was
Yeah.
covering college football at the time, and that
Okay.
took up like all of my attention. Like I was very immersed in that job, and so it just never really aligned. I had moved from New York City at that time, so yeah, definitely that helped me remove the fandom from my life. And since then, it's been just strictly the ins and outs of the job.
Appreciate you sharing that. Appreciate you sharing that. I wanted to get into, obviously the New York Mets here. That's what we talk about. The collapse of the 2025 season. This was a really, I felt like a big collapse. There wasn't the pitching went wrong there. Sean Manaea, Kodai Senga, David Peterson in the second half just really did not do well. And it's, what did you think about 2025? Obviously, you brought in Juan Soto, you're bringing in these players, you sign a Griffin Canning, sign a couple of players, but it wasn't the year that the Mets wanted. What did you think about that?
Well, first I thought that the first half they were probably playing maybe above expectations or quite a bit above expectations for a while. Like I don't know if I ever said to myself, I am watching the best team in baseball while they sported that record.
Yeah.
There were things about that record, and not to say that they were doing it with like funhouse mirrors where it wasn't real, but like, there were some things there that kind of pointed toward regression coming. To the
Hmm.
level that it came, absolutely not.
Yeah.
That was definitely, that part was sort of unforeseen, right? Nobody really anticipated that much of a collapse. A slow collapse like that is rarely seen, if ever, right? Especially for a team as talented as the Mets were last year. I mean, we had guys tell us this is the most talented team I've ever played on. And so, especially when you compare that to the rosters that Steve Cohen has built in recent years, that was frankly saying a lot
Hmm.
last year. But to answer your question, obviously the pitching faltered,
Yeah.
but it was mostly, I would say, like a perfect storm of things, right? Like they had the Sean Manaea injury, Kodai Senga's injury. That was sort of like the turning point, if you will, of last
Hmm.
season. And then that had a trickle down effect because those were supposed to be your top two guys. And then you go as long as the Mets did without a starter, even going into 6 innings as a start. I mean, that's problematic for a bullpen. So that had an effect, right? Like all of a sudden, that
Hmm.
unit that was pretty strong for you became compromised because they were being asked to do more than probably what they should have been doing, just by virtue of that's what the reality was for the club. And then offensively, like there were stretches where things just didn't click. And
Hmm.
I thought that there were some weird stuff as far as the statistics go with runners in scoring position. Of course, there's the number that Steve Cohen alluded to just the other day during his news conference here in Port St. Lucie about being 0-70 after trailing after the eighth inning. Like no ninth inning comebacks is sort of crazy as well. So there
Yeah.
were a lot of things like that that contributed to the wins and losses. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, the Mets for them missing out on the playoffs.
Yeah, man, it definitely was a horrible to me. It was a horrible collapse. The pitching faltered, just like you said. The injuries definitely were a big part. And the runners in scoring position, I completely agree with you. I felt like it was weird. I felt like I was very surprised that just the Mets just couldn't really hit with runners in scoring position. They were having a lot of issues there. And there was a lot of things from the fans saying, "Yo, get rid of this like hitting coach, get rid of this hitting coach, change something." And it was a lot of switches in the lineup, I felt, but the pitching definitely was the big part. And I'm glad that now we let me see here. I don't know what happened. Sorry, we lost there. We lost Will there for a second there. That was a little weird. Let's see here. Sorry. Yeah, that was weird. Sorry, the connection there for some reason. I think we lost Will for a second there. So let's see here. Uh, yeah, yeah. There was some freezing there for sure. Some freezing. But we gonna get it worked out and all that. So cool, cool. About that there. About that. Hey, I don't know what happened there. It's weird. Can't make it up with this connection, man. Can't make it up. But all right. Okay. Hey, well, sorry about that. For some reason, there was an issue
Oh, no
there.
worries.
Don't know what the issue exactly was. But okay, so but yeah, definitely there was a big collapse for the Mets there, and I'm happy that now it's a brand new team, and we'll definitely talk about that here. So, what did you think about the brand new team with the New York Mets? What do you think about the 2026 Mets?
Well, it wasn't the roster that I would have probably predicted at the beginning of the offseason, the way that it shaped out. But I like I like some of the things that they did. Right off the top of my head, the lineup is different just based on the identity of what the lineup should be. They're more contact oriented, which I think will help, particularly with those areas that we discussed about runners in scoring position and just hitting in different situations. I think you need guys who put the ball in play in those certain situations. So that should play well for them or play better than it did last year. I'm curious to see like how deep the lineup gets because you definitely need contributions from someone like a Luis Robert Jr. or a bounce back full season from Francisco Alvarez or for Brett Beatty to build off of his second half. Like you need a couple of those things to really pop to have a really deep lineup. Because on the surface, you have 1 through probably 4 or maybe 5 that you feel pretty strong about or fairly good about. Obviously, the top 3 guys are in a different level
Mhm.
in that order, assuming that Francisco Lindor is ready to go and healthy. So I do have some questions about just like the depth of the lineup and whether or not it's maybe too top heavy there. But I
Yeah.
do like the identity that they're trying to build with especially Bo Bichette right in the middle of things. I think that was a key add and probably should be good for their room too. I mean, we're talking about guys who in Marcus Semien, Bo Bichette, and Jorge Polanco, they're really known for strong work ethics and just the type of guys who sort of put their head down and go to work, particularly in the cases of Polanco and Bichette. That's their MO, it seems. And not that that wasn't the case for other guys who left, but I just feel like those guys have that strong reputation for doing that. And so when you build out that roster and you kind of shape it around those 2 superstars in Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor, I thought it was key for the Mets to also add someone of that cachet of a Bo Bichette on what is a pretty creative contract. We'll see how it plays out. But if
Mhm.
all goes well there, he's opting out after 1 year. But that's probably a good thing in some ways for the Mets because it means that he's able to cash in on a big season. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I like that aspect of it, but I do have some questions about the depth of the lineup. And then from the pitching side of things, look, I mean, they're banking on the bounce backs, right? From Sean Manaea and David Peterson, and to an extent, Kodai Senga. But they built um, they built enough, I think, with Freddie Peralta to ease some of that burden off of those guys. Because without Freddie Peralta's presence, you're really asking a lot of those guys to step up and perform at pretty high levels. Now, of course, you want that, but they're more so your 3, 4, 5 guys, in addition to Clay Holmes being in the middle of things as well. So, what you're asking of them, as far as what's needed, it's a little bit less as far as the pressure goes. And I think it also
Mhm.
helps McLean as well, because now you're not saying to yourselves, okay, our opening day starter is somebody with 8 major league starts under his belt, right?
Yeah.
Like you're talking about Freddie Peralta in that role, and then everybody else sliding down one. So that was big. But again, we'll see if lo and behold, it's the case where they need more, because you could map it out in your head and say to yourself, okay, like what if Sean Manaea does not revert to the form that he was in late 2024? Or, what if Kodai Senga stumbles again or deals with health issues again? Or if David Peterson's second half carries over into this season? There's a lot of what ifs on the negative side of this rotation, and you don't know quite yet what you're getting in Christian Scott, Jonah Tong, the guys who are behind him, even Tobias Myers for that matter. But I
Mhm.
will say, in that case, when that is your depth, that looks awfully good as far as the potential of what that could be. I'm not so sure if like something happens or a couple of things happen and they're pressed into action. How good did the Mets feel about needing those guys early on? I think that's a better case if you're asking for Christian Scott or Jonah Tong to make a contribution maybe later in the season, because one, Christian Scott's coming off the surgery and missing a
Mhm.
whole season, and then Jonah Tong, for as good as he is and could be as far as the talent goes, it's pretty clear that he would benefit from more seasoning in AAA.
Yeah, it's a brand new team. I think this is a team that's more balanced now. First of all, there was a lot of strikeouts before. These guys like Brandon Nimmo, Pete Alonso, they would strike out a lot. You saw the struggles with runners in scoring position last year. You're bringing in guys like a Luis Robert, a Bo Bichette, a Marcus Simeon, Polanco. Polanco definitely was hitting with runners in scoring position well last year, and you had Bo Bichette, who was a big piece. That's a guy that is, first of all, the protection for Juan Soto. I mean, Juan Soto. They asked him in the press conference. It was a couple of days ago. They asked him, "What do you think about the protection for you?" And he said, "We got Bo Bichette. Bo Bichette is a pretty good hitter. He's a really good hitter." So I think what Stearns wanted is he wanted more of a more balanced team, kind of similar to the Toronto Blue Jays. Do you think? Am I right in that standpoint, or no?
Yeah, I think you're making some good points. I think that overall that's probably right. I don't think that they maybe wanted to mirror exactly the Blue Jays, but the Blue
Yeah,
Jays did a lot of good things, right? Defensively, they were pretty strong. Um, and that's what the Mets wanted to be, especially up the middle. If Lindor is healthy and if Robert stays healthy, they accomplished that, right? With Semien, Lindor, and Robert in center field.
mm,
Um, and then as far as the offensive approach, yeah, you're right. I think they're a more diverse lineup as well. They got some versatility to them in addition to being that balanced and more contact oriented group. You could see some guys bat in different places, that kind of thing. And, another sort of under the radar thing that's different about this year, and it could be a pro, it could be a con actually, is that, last year's group, they played every day pretty much. Like those guys were in the lineup pretty much every day. Brandon Nimmo, Pete Alonso, those guys were there. Now, I don't know if like you necessarily either want or need some of these newcomers on this team to play 162 games, right? Like you're
yeah.
probably asking these guys to give me your best like 150, right? Or give me your best 145 even in some cases. So I think that will be interesting to see like how they utilize certain players. And I think that's really how, not to go off on a different road, but that's really how someone like Brett Beatty could get up to say 450 plate appearances, is because of that, plus the versatility that they're trying to build with him. So there are some things to like, and then there's some things that I'm really curious about to see how they unfold.
No, I see exactly what you're saying. This is a comment here. Ask Will if he thinks we're running a 5-man or a 6-man rotation. What do you think about that in that standpoint there?
It's impossible to say. Like, I'm not trying to avoid the question, but it's just really impossible to say because, like,
Yeah,
right now, it's like, yeah, they have six starters who are healthy. 4 weeks from now, I bet
anything
you
could
one of them
happen,
is,
right? Like
I bet you
anything
just
could
one of them is
happen.
going to get hurt. Like, that's
Yeah,
just the way things go. Like, in every camp, one of their guys are going to get hurt. So, unfortunately, that's part of it. So, I would assume
yeah,
that it will be five. But the way things are structured right now, if everyone's healthy, it's hard to say. It depends on like who's going to perform, um, who distinguishes themselves in that way,
yeah.
and how the health component of it. So I would assume that they'll run a 5-man when they can, and if the schedule allows or if it necessitates a 6-man, they'll go to 6-man. I think that it kind of just depends on what the personnel is looking like at each given point of the season.
Yeah, appreciate you answering that. And then it was let me see, it was Tony here also. Randy, can you ask, well, with the addition of Melendez and also Mike Togman, who as well yesterday. So does that mean a Beatty or a Vientos will get traded for an arm? Or do you think that's still a possibility? Because
Yeah, I would say like sure anything is like possible, but like I'm not really expecting that to happen. No,
yeah,
um, mainly because like Mark Vientos is still somebody that could get at bats at DH. He could still provide some power for you. Um, what kind of armor are we talking about too in that hypothetical? I'm not sure
yeah,
because they're not just gonna. I don't think they're going to give up Vientos for like nothing, right? Like a
yeah, like
like prospect armor or something like that. I think it has to be a decent piece if that's the case. And then with Beatty, especially, like he's extremely valuable. I would say like he's the type of guy that teams are calling the Mets on and they are interested in him. But it's going to require a lot, even though like on the surface there's not a set path for playing time. Playing time does exist for him, like I said, like not because like even if he's not going to be like your starting third baseman, like he can draw starts there. He could draw starts at first base. DH is still open. Right field is still open. So I think the guys that were brought up in that question, yeah, they play a role in the playing time, sure. But that also depends on like those guys' performance as well. I don't think it's a given that like those guys have roles, right? Like one
Yeah.
is on a split deal, the other is on a minor league contract. So it's no given. There's no promises. There's no guarantees there as far as like this is your role. So like they have to do their part to distinguish themselves. So there's a lot in play there. Down the road, sure, like it's a possibility. I don't see it right now.
Yeah, no, I don't see it either. I think Mark Vientos is probably going to be the DH. Beatty, as we heard today from Carlos Mendoza about the hamstring injury, he might that might be something, might be not. Apparently the physicals are fine, but maybe something to watch. I don't know, but I think Mark Vientos, we saw 2024. He gave you 27 home runs, 86 RBIs. He looked pretty good, but 2025, Mark Vientos, he struggled and he didn't do so great. It was that sophomore year slump, and that happens to a lot of baseball players. But I just don't think that the Mets should just give up on Mark Vientos right now, because who's going to be the DH?
Yeah.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't think so. So
The other thing is that like Vientos's value right now is not very high, right? So like you're not
yeah,
going to get a whole lot in return because he's coming off of a bad season. Defensively, everybody in the league has the same questions that the Mets do, which is what position could this guy play? Because the defensive numbers are not good for him, and he does not pass. He has not passed the eye test in recent years defensively. Perhaps he gets better. He's still young enough where that could definitely happen. I don't put that past him, but we have to see that. And then also with like what you mentioned with the Beatty injury, I think the two
mm,
guys that were mentioned there, particularly the newest one, Talkman, you know, what happens if like Benj isn't ready to make the club, right? And
yeah,
what happens if Beatty does not look good in the outfield? Like those are plausible things. And so I think it behooves the Mets to add guys on these types of deals because those guys were available. They're really good. I mean, with Talkin's a pretty good player that we're talking
yeah.
about here, who you got
I
on a
like
minor
him.
league deal. So like it just makes sense as far as depth goes to give yourself that cushion and that maybe you know provides a little bit of stability behind like what I
Yeah.
said. If those things don't work out for you, you have other options.
hmm And somebody wanted to give you your flowers. A shout out to my guy Randy, and flowers to Will. Thank you for all the hard work you put in. You really do all put so much work in. He wanted to ask a question here. I have for Will. With Lindor maybe missing opening day or the possibility of more time, who would be the next option to play shortstop to Lindor? Will it be a Ronnie Mauricio? Will it be a Kessinger, a Jackson Clough, who Christian Arroyo? Do you think Mauricio would get that spot? I don't know. Like,
He could. I mean, he has minor league options. So like the worst case scenario is that you know, maybe Francisco Lindor needs a couple of weeks or whatever it is, and you could always just option Mauricio down to the minor leagues afterward. It's not as if it's not like you're really changing anything. Like you were probably going to use that option this year.
yeah.
Like he was part of your major league roster last year, so it's conceivable. He did take reps at shortstop today. I expect that to continue. And behind him, they also have a veteran in Brujan. He's an option. The guys that you listed are options. Again, we'll see which one of those guys stands out in spring training and which one of those guys stays healthy, but they're
Yeah.
all options there. And the way that the Mets are looking at this is it would be a short-term thing anyway, even if worst case scenario, Lindor is slowed down or something, you know, delays it. They wouldn't anticipate it being long.
Mhm.
Obviously, we don't know what the future holds. So, like maybe there is a setback, and they need to revert to more of a plan B there. But for right now, it would be Mauricio and those veteran types of depth infielders that you listed.
Yeah, I see exactly your point on that. I like Ronnie. You know, I want him to be successful, but he's had some issues. First of all, playing time. He's that torn ACL, missed a lot of time. He's not that good of a hitter when it comes to the right side of the plate, and you saw the struggles that he had making contact last year. That's a big thing. He was swinging for the fences. It looks like swinging at the floor at times. I like the kid. I think he has a lot of exit. First of all, when he hits that ball, that exit velocity is something special, but he really struggles with the contact. So I think he kind of needs a year or some time in AAA to get right, and hopefully maybe that'll give the Mets a better option with a better Ronnie Mauricio down the line. Down the line, I wanted to get this here: the high AAV short term contracts. I feel like that's the way we're kind of heading. Like I if there was any guy that I think that the Mets would have offered a contract to, a long term contract, it would have been a Kyle Tucker. And the Mets didn't offer. I don't think that they offered a long-term contract to Kyle Tucker. They offered the high AV contract. What do you think about that? Do you think we're headed that way towards, or do you think that Stearns just really, this is his way of using that money, but being smart with the flexibility of the team?
It's sort of been that way throughout Stearns' tenure so far with the Mets, right? Because
Yeah.
like the only real outliers here have been the Yamamoto pursuit and the Juan Soto pursuit, right? Like those were like your big long-term commitments that they were trying. One worked out, one didn't. And in both of those cases, we're talking about players who were 25 years old. And so that's really the difference. Now, Bo Bichette, you could say, well, Bo was not that much older than that. And yeah, you're right, which was why teams were looking at Bo Bichette for a long-term thing. But he was also not coming off of his best season either, right? So like from the player perspective, you can understand Bo looking at it and saying, look, I'm a lot better than the numbers that I posted last season. So like, let me take this offer, which is fairly good. I mean, he's getting what, $40-something million a year to play one season.
Yeah.
Pretty incredible, and rightfully so. But you could say to yourself, if you're him, let me take this deal and then max out next time around and get that huge number. But for a lot of these guys who the Mets are pursuing, that's been sort of the common denominator, is that they're going to be creative with that. And again, like, they're going to be pretty selective with the shots that they take for long-term deals. And we've seen that so far. Like they haven't really pursued like every free agent possible under the sun, right? They've been pretty selective with like who they go after on the long-term side of things. And then I thought this year was a little bit different from the short-term side of things, because like they were in on, say, a Kyle Schwarber for a while. They were obviously in on Kyle Tucker, and then they pivoted to Bo Bichette. So like there were other things that they were interested in. So like that was different, but I think it just kind of goes to show you like they're going to react to markets, and they're going to react to what the markets are telling them for certain players. And every offseason is probably going to be a little bit different in that regard, because obviously next year we have Skubal in the mix, right?
Yeah.
And he is definitely going to get a long-term type of deal, assuming he puts up Skubal type numbers in 2026.
Yeah. So like Stearns hopefully would give Derek Skubal, a long-term contract, right? If there's any guy to give a long-term contract, it's a Derek Skubal. He's had some injuries, but I mean, Derek Skubal is one of the best pitchers in the game. So I hope that they do make that big offer next year, and hopefully we'll have some baseball next year as well. But we'll see on that. But these high AAV contracts, I feel like this is where I feel like David Stearns, he wants that flexibility with the team, and I understand that, because when you look around the long-term contracts, how many long-term contracts are really successful? I don't think that there's a lot of long-term contracts that it's been that successful. Yes, we're paying Juan Soto to he's whatever age he is a 15-year contract, but that's Juan Soto. That's a special case. So I can see, where that's going. I want to talk about this guy here, Carson Bench, because this is a guy that's been talked about. This is a guy that's been hyped up, and now you even got Juan Soto saying it. Juan Soto saying, "Look, I moved to left field, but we got a pretty good prospect at right field that could be making his rounds. So in spring training and hopefully to the majors. This is a guy that they really delivered in single A, double A, but he struggled in triple A. There was an injury there. Do you feel that the Mets are going to give him every opportunity to make this team? And do you feel like the struggles with triple A, are we reading too much into that or no?
I don't know what to make of the numbers in AAA. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's too much of a sample size to draw much from in the first place. And I was not there in Syracuse watching him and looking at his at bats and telling, so I couldn't tell you like what he was doing to get to those results. And I think that's really at the heart of the issue when you're analyzing things, right? Is like
Mm.
the swing decisions and like what kind of outs they are. Like, was it a lot of hard contact and it was just bad luck, that kind of thing. Hard to do that, and it's hard to really extrapolate much from that sample size. It is worth noting though that the results weren't there in AAA, right? Like that's fair to say. That's pretty obvious.
I mean, yeah.
But as far as giving him the chance, yeah, I think they're giving him a chance, but they're not just going to like roll him out there if it's pretty clear that he's not ready for this. I think that they'll just put him in AAA, and then that will be that. And they'll roll with who they have on the roster and some of the guys that you talked about, whether it's Talkman or Mendez, in addition
Yeah.
to Beatty, Taylor, whoever else. So,
But
yeah,
those guys haven't
you know,
hit much. Those like Melendez, the guys that you mentioned, I don't think that they've hit much in the past. Melendez has been a hitter that's hit, like 240, 230 down for the last years of his career. He's never really been a hitter to hit over 260, 270. So they're putting a lot on bench. And I hope that he, takes that opportunity and runs with it, because the Mets, I feel like they need a guy to take that opportunity and just run with it. They haven't had that guy since, I believe, Pete Alonso. When Pete Alonso came up in 2019, he delivered right away. So
yeah, they're going to
and
give like based on their acquisitions. Obviously, they've given him the runway to at least be in the competition. Like they haven't blocked him, right? Like that's pretty clear
yeah,
by these acquisitions. They have not blocked him from winning the job, right? So I think that they've been pretty consistent with the messaging of he's going to get every chance, but it's up to him. I mean, we don't know what he's going to make of the opportunity. We can't say that. So yes, it's there in front of him. If he's able to perform and if he's able to do what he's capable of doing and put it together, then he's going to make a strong case for that job. And if he checks all those boxes, then they'd be hard pressed to find probably a better alternative if he shows that he's ready because of what you
yeah.
just mapped out. Like they didn't go out and get somebody that's going to be in front of him in a major way.
They
But they
didn't.
do
They
have other
didn't get an
guys
Austin
that
Hayes.
could.
They didn't get an Austin Hayes.
Yeah, they do have
Liriano.
guys who could at least keep the seat warm for him for a couple of weeks or a month or whatever it is, if it is something where they want to wait on it for whatever reason.
Yeah, no, like I said, I truly, truly hope he runs with the opportunity, because I feel like there is going to be a lot of pressure on him to perform, because they didn't get anyone else. They didn't get Austin Hayes. They didn't get Liriano. They didn't get, these guys that maybe they could have got. They didn't get a Stephen Kwan. So yeah, we'll see there. Well, this is a question. In your opinion, do you feel the Mets have narrowed the difference between themselves and the Dodgers? If not, what else do you think that the Mets should to put themselves in their range?
Yeah, no, not really. Not as much as as what would change my opinion on, I guess, the two franchises right now. If you look even on like projections, there's the Dodgers and then there's everybody else. But to the Mets' credit, like they're right there with the Blue Jays, the Yankees, some of their NL East peers like the Braves and the Phillies as well. So like they're kind of bunched up in that group, but it's certainly a significant tier below the Dodgers, and rightfully so. Like they're just loaded from top to bottom with so much superstar power. Not to mention, like what kind of gets lost in it is that they still have a fairly good farm system as well. So they do still have dudes who are at the minor leagues who are going to help them, whether it's with acquisitions or if one of these guys get hurt. So there's definitely a huge divide, and it's not just the Mets; it's everybody in baseball and the Dodgers.
Yeah, no, I feel you there. We got a question here from Blunt Thoughts Hector here. Can you expand on the comment in the Justin Willard story that the Mets will enter the season as if they need him to perform? I think that's the question. Yeah, from Hector here.
Yeah, so I did a story with talking with Justin Wheeler just about some of those guys who, in my opinion, really sway what you make of the Mets, right? Because if they do get a bounce back season from Minaya, then they're looking at somebody who is probably a solid number three, number two type guy for you. And that's huge for them because they already have somebody at the front of their rotation, like a Freddie Peralta, and somebody
Hmm.
who's capable of doing the same in Nolan McLean. So, um, for me, that's what I'm most curious about when it comes to the Mets is like what this new pitching coach and like what these guys themselves can get out of themselves, whether it's Senga, Minaya, and David Peterson, because I do feel fairly confident that Clay Holmes is what he is. He's a solid guy who should be in the number three, number four spot in your rotation. Maybe there's more in year two. I don't doubt that. But even if it's just what he did last year, that's helpful for you.
Yeah.
Not everybody is going to give you 6 or 7 innings types of all-star performances, whatever. He was pretty good.
Mm.
So yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. With Minaya in particular, like they're doing some different things. Like they're trying to get him to throw the changeup a little bit more. He was strictly a two-pitch pitcher pretty much last season. His arm slot is sort of in between where it was in 24 when he made that change to Chris Sale and the
Yeah.
extreme slot that he got to last year, which in his own admission was too much. So there's a lot of interesting changes that he is trying to actively make and incorporate this spring. And then with Senga, the idea is to get him to be more of that power pitcher that we saw in the past, who was
Mhm.
utilizing that big fastball and having the splitter play off of it. So for Willard, it's a challenge to sort of, I mean, this is his job, of course, but this is the
Yeah.
challenge of his job is to meet these guys and understand like what they're trying to who they're trying to be and what they're trying to do to get to that person who they think that they can be as a pitcher. So that was the gist of that story, and I just think it's an important aspect of the team because there's so much riding on needing more from your starting rotation. And sure, it starts with those first two guys and even Clay Holmes, but you need more no matter how you slice it from David Peterson, Minaya, and Kodai Senga.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, thanks, Hector, for that question. The new look rotation. This is there's a lot of pressure. Obviously, you saw last year the pitching really faltered. This year is going to be a brand new rotation. You got Freddie Peralta, who is the big acquisition here, and Tobias Myers as well. But Freddie Peralta is the big one. Now he hasn't pitched a lot of innings. He has a lot of strikeouts. Do you think that with Freddie Peralta, do you feel that the Mets are going to push him to pitch 6 innings, 7 innings, around that range? Do you think he can give that to the New York Mets? Because I feel like he hasn't done that with Milwaukee. And I don't know if maybe Milwaukee wasn't pushing him that way.
Well, if you look at the pitch count, sometimes it's just that he does not win leverage counts, right? Like he's
Mm,
falling behind to batters and like he's racking up these long pitches per plate appearance, and it's just that's just not going to be a formula for long outings. So
yeah.
he has to work on that in order to be that type of pitcher. Because right now, yeah, the end result could be a strikeout, but like how many pitches did it take to get to that point? You may have been behind in the count to start with at 2-0, 2-1. You're battling back. It's those little things like that that answer your question. It's not so much as like asking him to do it. It's more so like at bat by at bat, making
Yeah.
sure that he's putting himself in those situations as a pitcher and just really understanding and grasping that that's where it starts. Because if you're into the third inning with whatever amount of pitches, you're just not going to last. And so that's really, as far as the quality goes, nobody's going to debate that Peralta has great stuff. It's just, yeah, getting to that next level where like you are getting strike one and it's that boring stuff. That's reality is winning
Yeah.
those leverage counts and shortening those at bats, getting easier out sometimes too, where like, he has shown and demonstrated that he's capable of like 200K seasons. Maybe there's more to be said about getting ground balls in certain situations and things like that. So I'm curious to see how that plays out for Freddie. But he's also facing a free agent season after this, so he personally has a lot riding on
Yeah.
the line here. So it's in his best interest to put together probably his best year of his career, of course.
Is it, hopefully there's maybe an extension with the New York Mets, maybe something with Freddie Peralta. He's already talking about he likes the colors, the orange and blue, the blue and orange. So, it, do you think that maybe there's any chance to an extension with Freddie Peralta, or is just a wait and see?
I mean, for the Mets, I don't think that they're really in any rush because
Okay.
like you don't know how he's going to fare. Like you already have the guy.
Yeah.
And if he's already interested perhaps in doing it, like you own the leverage in that situation at this
Yeah.
point. And I think that there is something to be said about waiting it out and seeing how he performs from going from the smallest market in the sport to the largest market in the sport, with so much expectations being different and everything like that. So there's a lot to like about Freddie, and obviously the
Yeah.
fit that with David Stearns and Eduardo Brizuela, they know him very, very well, obviously. So it should work out. But if you're in the Mets shoes, like you are Steve Cohen's Mets and you're able to flex your wallet whenever. So like they're not in a situation where like they have to like get a deal done here, I don't think, especially with like when you look at the rest of the free agent market and starting pitching, like we just talked about Scooble a few minutes
Yeah.
ago, right? Like
Yeah.
there are other options out there for you that you may want to consider. And they should be doing that when you're the New York Mets.
Yeah, no, I definitely I see exactly what you're saying. I feel like with the pitching free agency next year, it's gonna be so many pitchers available. So maybe there's not really pressure to extend Peralta here. Well, and yeah, they got to see how he performs. Who knows how he's gonna perform in New York? And McLean, that's one that he is one of the most exciting starters in the game. Do you what do you think about him being in the WBC? Is there any limits on him with the innings pitched or yeah? So yeah, if there's
Yeah,
any
no, I think there's obviously a great reason why the WBC for USA wanted him, right? Like he's extremely talented, and I think if you're him, like why wouldn't you go? Um,
yeah
yeah, I'm interested to see the workload proponent of it, like just like from that point of view, because like you're talking about a guy who, like we said, had the 8 starts. You don't know. There's no real. So I go back and forth with like, should you go with an innings limit? Should you not? There have been
yeah
studies that show that it doesn't really matter. Like these guys are probably going to get hurt one way or the other anyway. But you have to be mindful of it, right? And like you have to be checking in on him, and his ramp up is starting earlier now because he's going to be pitching in competition earlier. So he is already like Clay Holmes at a certain level that maybe some other guys aren't in their preparation for the season. So with all that said, like it's just a matter of managing it. And that there is probably a higher likelihood of maybe feeling some fatigue earlier than you otherwise would have because you're just starting earlier, right? So there's
Mm,
that to it. We're also talking about a pretty physical guy who has already shown us that hey, he was a hitter in college. The innings jump didn't really seem to have much of an effect on him. I would argue that he was at his sharpest at the major league level last season. So I'm not too worried about it right now as far as the workload goes. But we'll see, of course, come July and August, and we'll compare and contrast where he
yeah.
was at this point or at that point last season versus where he'll be this year.
Yeah, I feel like it helps also that he doesn't have a lot of mileage on his arm. So
Mhm.
I truly hope that McLean is going to be that special guy for years to come, for years to come. And then with this rotation, Clay Holmes had a really good 2025. He finished ninth in ERA. Great, pretty awesome signing so far for David Stearns. So credit to David Stearns on that. So I think he's gonna do fine. At times I feel like he struggles because he walks a lot of guys and he has a lot of movement on his pitches. I truly feel that way. And Kodai Senga, that's one that I'm surprised he's even on the team. I'm really surprised that Kodai Senga is still with the New York Mets, because I felt that with David Stern's comments after the 2025, that he doesn't probably see him making 30 starts. I thought he was going to be gone. I truly thought he was going to be traded, but he was not traded. And maybe he was shopped around, but there was no deal. They didn't get a deal done. What do you think about Kodai Senga? I don't know if the Mets can trust him. I just, from what I've seen from the past.
Yeah, it's going to be all about health with him. I mean, he is somebody that is very involved with his own mechanics. He in the past has had to feel right when he has been on the mound and to make himself available for it. But he put in a lot of work during the offseason. He was in the U.S., which is a difference for him. He did that in 2023 when he was preparing to make the move to the U.S. Hadn't done it since then. So that was pretty unique. And I'm curious to see, he was with Tread Athletics, which is a pitching facility that has helped a lot of guys over the last couple of years get better and better understand their own bodies. And so he talked that up, and we'll see what the results are. I mean, these guys, they all go to these places, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But in Senga's case, it is noteworthy that he was stateside this offseason doing that, particularly after the season that he had. And the fact that he came out of it saying, like I said earlier, that he wanted to be that power pitcher again. And right now, when I talk to everybody around the Mets, they're pointing to that fastball having a lot of life and being very intentional with what he's doing with it, which is also a difference from maybe where he would be in previous spring trainings this early. So there is a difference with him. We'll see if that matters come a few weeks when games start to be played, and obviously once the season kicks off.
And then I wanted to ask you here, with the WBC, I feel like this is an exciting time. We're finally going to see some baseball here in March, some competitive baseball. What do you overall think about your personal take about the WBC? Are you excited about WBC? Do you think it's worthless? I know, Sal doesn't like it. What do you think about it?
I think it's a fun event. Like once you get into the finals and you have a lot, it all depends on who's playing, right? I am not going to necessarily get up for a game between two countries that are featuring a total of 4 major league players. That's just not something I really care about watching. But if it's DR, Puerto Rico, the teams that take this really seriously, and when the crowds are involved, sure, it's baseball. And if these guys are taking it seriously and if they're competing in it, it's going to be worth watching. But that's where I kind of draw the line of my own interest in it, is I care as much as the talent is there and as much as the talent is saying that they care.
All right. Well, appreciate you, Will. Thank you for the time. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the episode, enjoyed the show. And yeah, man, let's go Mets always. Have a good one,
Appreciate it,
everybody.
Randy. Thanks, man.